Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a Korean slasher film, Bloody Reunion. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The film begins with a popular pregnant female teacher, who is well respected by her students. Teacher is so devoted to her career that when her labor is due, she still brings her class out for an excursion. Unexpectedly, she later delivers a deformed baby. Her perfectionist husband breaks down, as he cannot accept such a harsh reality. On the first day of the son's enrollment to school, her husband takes the son to the basement, but hangs himself. Afterward, the deformed son also disappears. Many years later, detective steps into the same basement of teacher's house. As soon as he turns on the light, 4 corpses stare at him. To gather more information about the murder, detective proceeds to visit the 2 lady survivors at hospital. They are teacher and Mija, her caretaker. Detective learns that the murderer could be teacher's deformed son. Mija cannot stop crying. After a long while, she finally calms down and tells detective the full story. 1 year ago, teacher provides lodging to Mija out of kindness. Teacher is already old and suffering from illness. In order to cheer her up, Mija invites teacher's ex-students to visit her. Little does she know that a tragedy is awaiting them. On the day of reunion, teacher wakes up early to put on makeup. She hopes to receive her students with a bright image. It is her wish to see her students doing well in life. The first ex-student arrived as teacher's most favorite student, a man with curly hair nicknamed Curly. Teacher gladly takes hold of his hand, but Curly seems to feel unease. Even though he makes strange statements, teacher does not notice anything wrong. And then, the class chairman and chairwoman also reach teacher's house. In fact, chairman, full of grumbling, answers teacher with blunt words, leaving her speechless and awkward. Fortunately, chairwoman breaks the ice and covers up his faults. Soon after, Pretty Lady in Red, nicknamed Pretty, and the man handicapped, come together. After greeting fellow classmates, they proceed to meet teacher. At last, the guy Lonely also appears. Afterward, the students go to the outing by sea, while teacher goes to the basement to see the gifts received from them. Ex-student's visit makes her day, but such happiness is rather short-lived, and it shatters easily when she thinks of her husband and son. Her students are not in a good mood either. Chairman tries to drink away his sadness. Chairwoman and handicapped chance upon a dead animal, which is inhabited by worms. It is disgusting to see the worms wriggling on the rotten body. Pretty senses that someone else is stalking her. Comes the lunchtime, everyone is busying preparing food and setting tables. Pretty is exceptionally free. So Mija asks her to bring teacher out for a walk. On the way, Pretty recalls that she was a super fat and ugly girl back in school. During health screening, the weighing scale broke at her turn, but teacher and other classmates laughed at her, blaming her for destroying the scale. This unforgettable shame drives her to renew her image. She spends loads of time slimming down, and burns her pocket for plastic surgery, so that she can become prettier. She repeatedly undergoes plastic surgery, to the extent that the clinic even blacklists her. While talking, she pushes teacher's wheelchair to the cliff. Scared by that, teacher screams out loud, and she stops right on the verge. And then, Pretty shows teacher her beautified eyes. Realizing it is just her prank, teacher feels relieved at last. By the time they return to the house, lunch is set. The students even prepare a cake for teacher. Chairman invites teacher to blow the candles, but she is too weak for such a simple task. Since teacher begins to cough, Pretty volunteers to do it on her behalf. Later, Handicap throws in a topic to keep the conversation going. As a distinctive contrast to the rest, Lonely only drinks and does not utter a word. Soon, everyone else turns to him and stares at him. This reminds Lonely of his painful childhood days. At that time, he witnessed a few naughty boys and girls secretly visiting teacher's son. One pupil removed the mask from the son's face and revealed his monstrous look. As soon as they saw his face, they fled away in terror. Lonely handed back the mask to the pathetic boy, but teacher mistook him for the bully. Without giving a chance for Lonely to explain the truth, teacher disciplined and punished him. Lonely is stuck in his memory until Mija approaches him at dusk. This time round, chairman gives teacher a deadly gaze. With a humble origin, chairman could not afford an expensive gift on teacher's day. In the presence of all classmates, teacher rejected his gift. From then onwards, teacher was never kind to him. Many bottles of wine down, chairman arises from his seat to unleash his anger. He breaks the wine bottle, while teacher finally tells stories of their past. What is worse, he even accuses teacher of her unreasonable and unfair treatment. As if that is not enough, he kicks down the barbecue stand and storms out of the lawn. Soon after, the remaining students shift to the living room. Handicap smells a stint and realizes that teacher is now incontinent. Mija and chairwoman then help teacher with a wash-up. Another round of conversation starts around the couches. Lonely mentions teacher's deformed son, a topic Handicapped hates to continue with. Therefore, Lonely embarrasses his fellow classmates by revealing their shady shit. Curly sharply interrupts, and Lonely leaves in angst. Chairman decides to have a walk on the beach. While he is smoking, a rabbit-masked man nicknamed Rabbit suddenly appears to him. Rabbit takes out a flint knife and cuts his body. Chairman wants to escape, but he trips over and falls on the beach. Rabbit catches up with him and stabs his back relentlessly. Blood flows profusely, and his shirt soon becomes red. Powerless, he is dragged by Rabbit to the basement. Rabbit wraps him up with tapes and ropes. His mouth is propped open, with 2 compasses nailed down to his lips and teeth. And then Rabbit drops broken blades into his mouth, pouring water and forcing him to swallow them. As the blade cuts him deep wherever they travel to, Chairman bleeds from inside out and dies miserably. In the bathroom, Chairwoman assists teacher with a shower. Teacher praises her smooth and radiant skin. Chairwoman remembers that back then, she could not afford to buy any Teacher's Day gift, but only wrote a card to teacher. As compared to other gifts, teacher scorned and ridiculed her. It was a trauma for her, and she wanted to take revenge on teacher. Then she instructs teacher to rest in the bathtub, while she cleans up the bath ball. The bathtub is too slippery, and teacher slides to the bottom of the tub. Though she calls chairwoman by her name on struggle, chairwoman does not respond to her. Luckily, Mija shows up in a pinch and rescues teacher. Upset, chairwoman journeys to the beach, searching for her boyfriend. She turns on the cell phone, only to find it without any reception. The environment is rather creepy, but from time to time as she turns around, she does not notice anything unusual. From a distance, she sees that some movement in her room. Thinking her boyfriend should have already returned to the lodging, she also walks to it. Back in the room, she sits on bed and shares her thoughts with the boyfriend. Strangely enough, she receives no responses at all. There are even strange noises coming from the blanket. Removing the blanket, chairwoman sees no one but a pillow and a rabbit mask. Just when she feels relieved, the murderer hiding under her bed slowly crawls out and kidnaps her. As the second victim is brought to the basement, chairwoman is also taped and tied to the chair. The horrid appearance of her late boyfriend scares her to death. Rabbit flips her eyelid and staples it close to the eyebrow. With her mouth stuffed, chairwoman could not even cry for help. One by one, bullets settled in, chairwoman's eyes are widened up. When sadistic Rabbit finally drops the bloodstained stapler to the floor, chairwoman also gives up her last breath. The rest of the classmates know nothing about the torture. Among them, Curly cannot fall asleep, for he vividly remembers how teacher's hand rubs against his. No matter how hard he tries, he cannot get rid of that weird feeling. So he leaves the room for beach. Lying down on the beach, he sees a lady in a gown walking towards him. Taking that as teacher, he is rather frightened. When the woman draws near, he then recognizes she is pretty. After Curly's departure, Handicapped opens his eyes. His broken leg is pricking his heart. Depressed, he drinks up and fits down his leg. And then he goes to teacher's bedroom. At that time, teacher is dreaming of the return of her son. In her dream, the son appears perfectly normal. However, in a flash, the son changes back to his ugly look and leaves. And then, her late husband shows up before her eyes. Teacher wakes up from the nightmare to discover Handicapped standing in front of her. Actually, teacher is the very culprit to account for Handicapped's injury. In the flashback, during a school relay competition, Handicapped was tripped over in his pair of old and worn shoes. But as he lost the competition, teacher slapped him and made him do countless squat downs until he broke his leg. While venting his frustration, Handicapped walks up to teacher. Rabbit shows up again. Handicapped runs away and locks up teacher's room. Rabbit gives a chase. Handicapped stumbles down a slope and picks up a wooden rod for defense. However, Rabbit appears at his back and knocks him out. He ends up hanging in a chain at the basement. Handicapped's body is filled with various kinds of wounds, and insects crawl over him. Some of those tiny beings enter his ears and eyes. Handicapped cries out of pain, and Rabbit bashes him with an iron rod. Eventually, Handicapped is killed by the insects. Mija finds Pretty missing and goes out looking for her. Armed with a torchlight, she comes to the basement. When she turns on the light, She is shocked by the horrid and bloody scene. In the meantime, Curly and Pretty are chatting on the beach. Owing to her childhood experience, Pretty has been feeling inferior to others. She greets each and every day by checking the mirror to ensure that she is pretty. Hearing the scream, Curly rushes to the basement and sees the three C's classmates. Curly believes that is done by Lonely, who is missing. It is because Lonely was once kicked out of the classroom when he dirtied his pants with smelly shits. Lonely's mom went to school to defend him, only to be killed in a car accident. In Curly's opinion, Lonely has paid this visit to avenge. Mija is not convinced, but Curly is confident. At this moment in time, Pretty shuts the door of the basement, leaving Curly and Mija behind. She then goes to Teacher's bedroom and removes her sunglasses. As Teacher looks, she sees Pretty swollen eyes with many scars on her eyelid. Curly tries to break open the door. Mija repeatedly hits the door with a shovel until it cracks open. Through the narrow opening, Curly stretches out his hand to unlock the door, and then the duo evade the room. Mija soon finds Teacher missing, and a strand of Pretty's hair is left in the bedroom. Since there is poor reception to make any call, Mija ventures to find Teacher in the dark. But the torchlight she brings soon runs out of battery, so she pulls the glow stick apart to continue with the search. At this moment in time, Pretty again takes Teacher to the cliff. It turns out that this batch of ex-students are not successful in their lives. Having lamenting over her own sorrows, Pretty intends to push Teacher off the cliff. In a pinch, Mija stops her, and the two ladies wrestle together. In their struggle, Pretty loses her foothold and falls to death. Mija escorts Teacher back to her room and locks the door and windows. To her shock, Curly appears out of thin air and knocks out Mija. He drags Teacher to the entrance of basement and kicks her down the stairs. As Teacher groans in pain, he throws her to the bright light. It is never his wish to be Teacher's most favorite student, especially when Teacher regards him as a replacement for her son. Curly pours the tank of gasoline all over Teacher's body, prepared to bury her in flame. Just when he is about to ignite fire, Rabbit suddenly emerges out of nowhere. They both want to strangle the other one. Curly picks up the compass and stabs it into Rabbit's neck. To retaliate, Rabbit pokes through Curly's eyes. Looking at Rabbit's mask, Teacher speculates that it could be her son. To her surprise, the murderer reveals himself to be Lonely. Lonely's neck is stained with blood. As Mija observes, Lonely attempts to hit Teacher with a chair. Before Mija could prevent him from doing so, he slowly collapses due to heavy blood loss. Back to the present, Mija's story sounds logical and flawless, but Lonely is not found dead in the basement. Detective orders his officers to track down Lonely. Later, they break into Lonely's apartment. The floor is wet, and a dry corpse is found. The weird thing is that Lonely is a male, but the room is full of ladies' accessories. Detective looks around and spots Mija's name on the whiteboard. Stricken by such a discovery, Detective immediately leaves the apartment. As he drives back to the police station, a report comes to him that the victims died of poison, and Mija has run away from the hospital. Detective recalls that Mija describes her classmates as losers, but in reality they are doing great in life, as shown by the newspaper articles in the room. This group of students make it a norm to have a reunion once a year. Detective then travels to Teacher's house and confirms that the cake is poisonous. When he opens the cabinet in the kitchen, many plastic bags drop out. Each plastic bag contains Teacher's feces. At the same time, Mija brings Teacher to the pier. The truth is, Mija is the Rabbit murderer, the very Lonely in her story. All the painful and unpleasant sufferings appear in the story, all belong to her, rather than the classmates. She was kicked out of the classroom and ridiculed by her peers. Mija knows her classmates are not to be blamed, but she cannot forget what Teacher has done to hurt her pride. After her mother died in the car accident, she decided to avenge her blood. So she poisoned everyone and forced Teacher to witness the death of her favorite students. Mija sheds tears as she accuses Teacher of causing so much pain to her. Upon finishing her words, she commits suicide by jumping down the pier. Teacher falls from the wheelchair and begs Mija to value her own life, but her words are spoken in vain. Teacher breaks into bitter cries. The movie ends with only a wheelchair standing on the pier. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Peace out.